Hey everybody. Today we're going to be talking about things you should look for when buying your first rental, or I guess really with any rental. For those you don't know, I'm Roddy.
I'm Landy.
And we talk about all things real estate, how to purchase real estate off market or even with a realtor. All right? I myself am a realtor, and if you ever need help buying or selling a house, feel free to contact me. So let's get started. So what are some things that people should look for when buying a rental?
I think the first thing you should know which area you want to buy. The location. You want to buy in your backyard or you want to buy miles away in another city.
Sure. And again, both could have their advantages depending on the actual property itself. But again, if you buy in your backyard, it helps keep it easy to maintain, especially if it's your first rental or one of your first few rentals and you want to be a little bit more hands-on. You definitely don't want to be driving miles across town or to other cities for any issues that may come up. So definitely consider the location of your first rental.
Unless it's in the very expensive area, if you live in California, New York, you just couldn't afford to buy a rental. The price is just way sky high, and it's even not a tenant favor state.
Right.
So that's something you need to consider.
Sure.
Then you have to consider to buy in another state.
Places like Texas and Houston,
yeah.
Right, where it's definitely more landlord friendly and a lot more affordable to purchase properties, especially for rentals that can actually cash flow when you first buy them. So yeah, good things to consider. Another thing to consider is the actual purchase price, or what the price of the house can rent for. I think you want to kind of find a nice little mid-level for where most people can afford. I think you don't want to get too high. It's always, some people may like to have higher priced properties where you can rent for higher prices, which is fine. But then you got to consider times like the times we live in now, when a lot of people are losing jobs, there's a recession, people are kind of tightening their belts. So the houses that are kind of in that middle range always will be rentable, right? And people who are in those higher level rentals, they may need to drop to lower price rentals. And again, so you still have a good base of people who are going to be renting those types of properties. You know, like here in the Houston area, you know, a lot of our properties are between like 15 and 17, 1800. And I think that's a pretty reasonable range, give or take. So always kind of consider how much the house can be rented for and how many people can rent that property.
Yeah, and if you buy a house very high in a very high price range, then also the rent and the price rate is also not very good.
Right. You know, so again, I think at the end of the day, you also want to consider how much can it cash flow once everything is said and done, right? Once you pay your mortgage and insurance and taxes and any maintenance, don't forget your maintenance, then how much does it cash flow, right? Are you only going to be cash flowing $50, $100? And are you going to be cash flowing maybe, $300, $400, $500, which I think is pretty reasonable in today's market. If you can get 300 plus, you're probably doing a pretty good job as far as finding a good property.
Yeah, you don't want to find some property after everything cash flow zero or even negative or only $50, which even couldn't cover the maintenance. So that can be something you don't want to buy.
Right. Or again, it cash flows so little or so negative, but people are banking on, well, it's going to appreciate. I can down the line. Well, again, that's kind of speculating. You know, some places you might be right, but again, it's not a chance that a new investor should be looking to take, especially at the beginning. So yeah, definitely consider how much cash flow you can get from that property.
Another thing I think people need to consider is if this property sits in a flood zone. Right.
Because at the end of the day, that could eat into your cash flow, right? Whether it's partially or fully in the flood zone, is it 100-year, 500-year, etc. And again, are you going to have to carry flood insurance on the property, which again, that could eat into your cash flow. Or even just down the line, if a disaster does strike and your house is actually flooded, the cost is going to cost to rehab. For some other investors, that may not be a big issue, right? Again, they take the insurance, the flood comes, and they get the money, they fix it, and they may even be able to pocket a little bit of the money that's left over. So for some people, again, it's not that big of a deal, but for newer investors, again, that may be a risk you shouldn't be willing to take at the beginning.
I agree with that.
Other things, just the neighborhood and the area itself, right? Are you going to be living in a good school district? Again, are you going to be highly desirable areas where people want to rent? Good schools, low crime, lots of good amenities, and shopping centers nearby where people can go and enjoy themselves. Or they're going to be in lower income areas, where that may be a little bit more dangerous, high crime, lower schools, lower school ratings. Now again, each one of them is going to have their plus and minuses.
Yeah, we're not saying don't buy those low income areas. Some area like that can really generate better cash flow.
Right. So yeah, without those areas, you're going to get better cash flow. You may get a little bit lower appreciation, but the cash flow in your pocket every month is going to be pretty good, even after fixing it and expenses, right? As compared to nicer areas, they may appreciate more, but your cash flow is going to be a little bit less. So just consider what's more important to you as an investor.
Whether you will feel comfortable to buy a property in this low income area or high crime area.
Right. Some people have no problem. Some people just avoid it like the plague. So again, that's the choice you have to make as an individual investor.
I think another thing is when we choose to buy rental, personally, I don't like to have a property with a swimming pool.
Right. Swimming pools are going to cause more liability, right? Again, you're going to have insurance to cover any liability if there's any accidents in the pool, plus maintenance, right? All of that has to be taken care of by you, the landlord. And so once again, with cash flow being one of the more important things with any rental, these are going to things that are going to eat into your cash flow, right? So things like pools or any dangerous toys around, like trampolines, are definitely not worth the risk, in our opinion. Some people might think, hey, it's a good thing to have because it makes it more highly desirable, which is true. But again, you just have to balance those things for yourself. Also, you may want to consider the size of the house itself, right? And how many bedrooms and bathrooms it has. Again, personally, we like those 3-4 bedroom houses with 2-3 bathrooms. Again, it just makes a little bit more desirable to rent and easier to rent, right? As compared to, we've seen some like 3-bedroom, 1 bath. Well, can you imagine a parent and 3 or 4 kids having to share 1 bathroom? I think you're eating into the pool of people who will want to rent your property, right? Or same thing with a 2-bedroom. Again, that's too little. Most people are going to have 2 kids plus or live with family, like parents. So you want more rooms, and it makes it easier to rent those properties. And also square footage. Right? You also don't want to get too big, right? What's normally we like to go, or what's
we would prefer under 2,000 square footage. That's our preference.
Right. And I think a lot of times this comes into play because of having to maybe possibly rehab the house when you buy it.
True.
Right. A lot of times when you buy a house at the beginning, if you're lucky, you may not have to rehab it, or may only need a cosmetic rehab. But again, the bigger the house gets, even a cosmetic rehab can add up pretty quickly. If it's 2,500, 3,000 square feet.
Even just for painting.
Right. It's going to cost a lot more money. And again, if you get into major rehabs, then it's going to cost a lot of money.
True.
And I think that's something else you should consider as a new buyer or landlord, is how much do you want to take on your first property as far as fixing it? Again, our suggestion is keep it almost turnkey or very light cosmetic rehab. You definitely don't want to get into a big rehab your first project.
Yeah, but you really don't know. You don't want to get into more issues, or all the plumbing issue, electricity issue. Now you have to knock down all the sheetrocks. That's just things keep going on. The rehab costs get too major.
Right.
You don't want to get that headache, especially it's your first property.
Right. You don't want to be stuck, with having to pay that bill, or having to pay that, interest if you're using hard money for longer than you need. Oh, this is going to be a 3-week project, turns into a 3-month project, right? And then you have to pay that every month out of your pocket. Or reserves. So again, it just may not be the best thing to consider as a new investor. I think going to the house itself, something that we like to avoid are 2-story houses.
Yep, 2-story.
Right.
Why is that? We got some issue with one of our first properties, a 2-story. We didn't think about that.
Right. Our first and our first property and our only 2-story property, which we've already sold by now, again, does come with issues, because a lot of times plumbing and wiring does run through the space between the first and second floor. So if there's any issues there, well, then you got to cut into your ceiling, to get there, to patch any electrical or plumbing, and of course, and patch it back up. Now, again, it may not be that expensive. You have to cut some sheetrock and cut and float it and put it back. But again, it just becomes a hassle, and sometimes having to locate a leak. Right, just because you see a leak here doesn't necessarily mean the leak is right above it. It could be traveling from some other location, and so they might start cutting here, and the leak is not there, and they got to keep cutting and cutting and cutting until they finally find a location. So again, that just becomes an issue, and it becomes messy. Again, if it's good cash flow and it's just a great gem of a property, well, again, you don't have to avoid all 2 stories. It's just something, if possible, avoid them. But again, sometimes 2-story houses can make great rentals.
True.
Right? Another issue that you may run into are things like taxes. How much tax are you going to have to pay on that property, right? I think different areas of town are going to have different tax rates. So again, you have to be careful with that, because whether you decide to pay it all at once at the end of the year or escrow it, which we recommend, again, that could eat into your cash flow. And then there's things like the dreaded HOA, right?
Especially for condos, townhomes.
Right.
sometimes it just scare me. You look at the HOA, what the heck? Like $500 a month,
a month,
$450 a month, and you add on those numbers, then you don't have any cash flow left.
Right. Again, it could be minimal to nothing. So you have to be careful because the price might sound great, the rehab might sound good, taxes, insurance. Oh, it's so great. Oh, I'm going to make 500 cash flow. Awesome. Oh wait, I have to pay 300 a month in HOA. Now I only make 200. Oh, now it kind of starts. You may have to reconsider and double think whether that's a good investment or not. And then on top of that, just on top of having to pay HOA, HOAs can be an issue in themselves, right? Just with maintaining the property. Again, I think they're well intentioned in what they try to do, but I'm sure any homeowner or other landlord out there has stories of having to deal with HOAs, right? And some are stricter than others. Some will restrict the color of your house, right? What color can you paint your house? What color can you paint the fence? What kind of fence can you have? You can't have plants on your front property. So again, and that can just be more of a headache than anything else. It doesn't really affect anything else. It just affects your peace of mind and tranquility. So that can be also an issue with HOAs.
Yeah, if you buy a first rental or sitting in a condo, those broken condo deal, but you share the roof with your neighbors. And once you get a deal, you say, oh, the price, everything good, but you didn't check when was the last time they maintained the roof. Then you're moving, tenants moving, all of a sudden they say, oh, the roof got an issue, we're going to replace the whole roof.
Right.
Hey, everyone going to pitch in.
And
that's extra cost you don't even think about.
Right. Or your neighbor could say, nah, I don't need to fix it, right? Because you have to they have to agree to fix it because it's a shared roof. So again, either you can't afford to fix it, or you got to eat the whole entire bill because they don't want to, or they can't afford it. Best case they do, and you can split the cost. But I think when you're looking at rentals and any kind of investment, always look at the worst case scenario, right? And then if anything better comes out, great.
Yeah, we're not saying buying a condo as your first rental is not a good choice. It's just not for us.
Right.
Yeah, for us, we prefer single family home, which has better appreciation.
Right, in the long term, right?
Yeah.
And to get the tax benefits and all that good things that come along with it. And there's so many strategies out there that people like. I mean, there's short-term rentals, they get like Airbnbs, or people buy like multifamily. And again, these are all great strategies. Again, they may not be the best for a new investor. Maybe they are. Again, there's some great ways to learn about that stuff and to make some good cash flow. They all have their plus and minuses, right? We're really talking about what we do and what we feel comfortable in, like our wheelhouse.
Right. So mainly we do is long-term rental.
Right. So I think these are a lot of things to consider. Again, any landlords out there or investors, things we left out or things we should consider. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Leave some comments below. If you have any questions about moving to the area, please feel free to reach out. Again, I am a realtor. I'm a licensed realtor here in Houston and Texas. I'd love to answer any questions. So we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for watching. Bye.